Hello and welcome to the Only Endometriosis podcast you need, and to this special series where I walk my own recovery path in real time with you. Before we dive in, a gentle reminder, I'm not a doctor. I'm a women's health therapist who's lived with endometriosis and managed my own symptoms for more than 2 decades, and I've supported hundreds of women through the twists and turns of this condition. I know my body, I know my triggers, my patterns, and the little whispers that tell me when things are flaring, and I know the red flags that mean it's time to get urgent medical help. I'm doing this journey with proper medical support from my GP. What I'm sharing here is my lived experience. This is not a blueprint, it's not a prescription, and it's not a promise of what will work for you. The tools I use are the tools I trust for my own body. Endometriosis shows up differently in every woman, and what's soothing for me may not be right for you. So please, as you listen, take what resonates and leave what doesn't. Seek your own advice, follow your own instincts, and remember that your path will be as unique and sacred as your body is. This is one woman's story, raw, honest, and shared in the hope that it helps you feel a little less alone as you walk your own path. Hello there, and welcome to the next edition of the Only Endometriosis podcast you need. In this episode, I am going to look retrospectively at week 5, so what would have been the 14th of January. Now, these notes that I'm reading from did take place. I wrote them down on the 14th of January, so they are a snapshot of what happened then. They're just being recorded later. And this episode is really, really interesting because this is the episode, or one of the episodes, I was alluding to when I said earlier in the series about the trap, if you will, of retrospectively recording episodes. I wanted to keep this as real time as I could. The whole point of this series is that you're walking through this 12-week pathway, this 12-week program with me as a client. And I wanted to keep it as real as I could. But this episode really shone a light on something that had happened only a week or two previously. It had been ongoing in the background, and I hadn't even given it a second thought when I sat down and wrote the notes for my last 2 appointments. So this episode is kind of a reflection on actually how difficult it is to be honest. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just generally mean how hard it is to be completely open, completely honest, and completely step back from your symptoms, from your life, from everything that you've got going on when you're in the middle of what it is that's going on. And that's not a bad thing. Our bodies, our brains release, cope with whatever they can in the moment. But it just goes to show how much stuff we carry and we don't even recognise we're carrying it. So I'll stop talking cryptically and I'll actually get on with the episode. So this episode is all about naming something that I just didn't say either last time or the time before. And that's not because it isn't important. It's not because it's not big. It is probably the most important business decision I've made in the last year, possibly even longer. And it actually is huge. But I just didn't factor into my thinking in the last 2 episodes, in the last 2 appointment notes. So this is about what's happening behind the scenes. This is about what's happening in your journey that you just get on with until you're actually ready to sit and reflect. And that reflection can come immediately. It can happen obviously during whatever's going on, or it can happen a fair while later. This has actually just happened. So like I say, the 14th of January, it's kind of about 2 weeks into the big thing. But it just shows how big it was and how little kind of kudos I gave it at the time. So essentially, it's opening a new clinic space in my new hometown. So as many of you know, I moved house a couple of years ago, and my clinic space used to be in my back garden. So when I moved house, the clinic essentially ceased to be, and that was fine. Last year, when we finally got settled with a new house, everything was moved, everything felt a lot settled, I decided to go back into treating women because I missed it. I was doing a bit of corporate work, a bit of training, but I really missed the clinic space. So I went back to work in a clinic. What I actually did was went back 1 day a week. I rented a space in somebody else's clinic, which was lovely, very nice setting, very relaxing, really, really enjoyed it. But towards the back end of last year, I started to get a pull towards having my own space again, my own clinic. Now, obviously, we're not in the position here where I could have opened something from home, so it was quite a big decision, but I was feeling it increasingly. And that was kind of only early December, really, that I started to have these ideas, or this pull started to get deeper and deeper. Essentially, well, what happened, this is typical me, what happened, I decided early December, well, sort of the back end of the first week of December, I decided that I was actually going to make it happen. 2026 was going to be the year where I opened my own clinic space. I messaged a couple of friends just to see if they knew of anything that would be coming up in terms of a building or a permanent room that I could use in an aligned space. The very next day, friend messaged me back, said she knew of a place. I looked at it the same day, signed the lease, and by the middle of December, I had essentially a new clinic space. It was an old office. It was very grey, very masculine, but it was mine. It felt right. I made it from an embodied decision-making place. So I checked in with my gut feeling, I checked in with my heart centre, I checked in with whether my body was telling me this was a good thing to do, and I just went with it. So although Christmas was closure for the clinic, and although I talked about not working, I think in one episode I even said, I even gave myself 2 weeks break, which is really, really unusual, and I was so proud of myself. I don't know if you could hear the pride in my voice, but I was so proud of myself, the fact that I didn't do any work over Christmas. And then when I was recording this episode, I suddenly realised, what did I mean I didn't do any work over Christmas? So the space between signing the lease, which I think was around about the 12th of December, to the 1st of January, was actually spent creating this new clinic space. So I had to figure out what equipment I still had, because I sold or donated, gave away a lot of the stuff that I had from the old clinic. So what did I still have? What was still aligned? What did I still want to use? What did I need to get? Could I afford all of this? All of these stresses, the physical moving, this physical setting up of the space, decorating the space, making it my own. Now, I knew that it didn't have to be perfect. It didn't have to be finished. Excuse me, I'm just going to take a drink of water. I knew that it didn't have to be finished. I knew that it didn't have to be perfect. It just needed to be good enough for me to start seeing clients from the 1st of January. I already had clients in. I see clients weekly. I see some clients fortnightly or monthly. So I knew that I already had some clients booked in for January. So I needed this space to be welcoming, warm, nurturing. Somebody has since, and again, this isn't the notes, obviously, but somebody has since referred to it as a womb of a room, which I thought was lovely. But that's kind of what I wanted to create. And I wanted that not necessarily, like I say, as a finished space, as a finished womb for opening, but it needed to feel finished. It needed to feel safe and contained for the women who were coming to see me. So I had all of that going on in the background. So here's me sitting here recording these podcasts, saying the words from my notes. Oh, aren't I great? I gave myself 2 weeks off. But knowing now what I didn't know then, that actually I didn't give myself 2 weeks off. And actually, although the pressure was quiet, although it was exciting, although it was perfectly aligned, and I was 100% sure it was the right thing to do, and I was excited, I was energised by it, there is a gentle layer underneath all of this of quiet stress. The stress of getting the space ready, the stress of changing all the details on the booking system, the stress of how I would actually do that, because up until the end of December it needed to give just 1 day's availability, and then that needed to magically give 5 days availability after Christmas. So the technical stuff, the practical stuff, the logistics stuff, and also the worry about, is this actually going to work? This is a big financial commitment to go from 1 day a week to pay rent on a permanent place. There's a lot of gentle pressure. And I'm saying gentle pressure. That's not what I've written here. My notes from the time, I have said gentle pressure. So my notes have said first clients, ? Brand new beginning, circle, quiet pressure, underlined. I'm not so certain it was quiet pressure. And again, I'm coming at this from a point of hindsight. And as a clinician, if I was my client sitting in front of me at the time saying this is a lot of gentle pressure, I would gently question that. And I would say, actually, this is a big thing. This is taking one area of your life that was quite embedded, working, nothing wrong with it, and actually putting a lot more pressure on it. So this was a huge thing that I just hadn't really recognised or given myself that space and permission to just really realise how big it was. And I think at the time I wasn't ready to do that. I think that would have added to the stress and anxiety that I was feeling. And I have put here, there was an emotional labour of minimising the risk, minimising the risk in my own head, minimising my anxiety, minimising my worry about doing this, and just cracking on and doing it. So I think had I sat down in those first 2 episodes and kind of just said, or if I'd have sat down at the time when I was doing the appointments that linked to the first episodes and said, oh my goodness, I've got this huge thing happening, in my mind that would have just added to the pressure, because saying things out loud does reaffirm them. So just getting on with it, just having it in the background, just literally working through checklists, working through to-do lists, felt the more manageable thing to do. However, as I've said countless times on podcasts, in workshops, to clients, by not acknowledging it and by not giving what was happening in the background this space, it did escalate. It seemed to be a lot. Not only that, but I also have a part-time job. It's very seasonal. It doesn't happen all the time. I just do it to sort of, to earn a little bit of extra cash, but mainly to so I have something else to do that isn't kind of as intense as clinic work or corporate training. I work part-time at a local college, and a lot of that is long periods of standing up, and it can actually really take its toll on my body if I'm not feeling great. It was exam season, so that first week back when my clinic opened, I took on quite a few exams and then was going to the clinic afterwards. So for the first up until this January 14th, so the first 2 weeks of January really, I had quite a full-on week or couple of weeks. I was doing a lot in my part-time job. I was doing a lot of standing, then I was doing a lot of walking to the clinic, then a lot of standing at the clinic and long hours at the clinic as I started to work these new hours, these new 5 days a week. So this had kind of a knock-on, a cumulative effect on my body and on my symptoms. So at this point of time, on the 14th of January, I wasn't actually feeling too bad, but I realised that actually it had been taking a massive toll physically, emotionally and energetically on my body. The stress of getting even though I didn't name it at the time, the underlying background stress of getting the clinic up and running, not having as much time the first 2 weeks of January as I would have liked to because I was doing additional work in my part-time job, and the physical strain that took put on me was all adding up. It was all a lot. So I had a Reiki session. I love Reiki, as you all know. It's always been the cornerstone of my own self-care. It's the first modality that I learnt back in whatever it was, 2002, 2003. And it forms the cornerstone of a lot of, I would say probably 99% of the clinic and program work I do with clients as well. So it's hugely important for me. And I know that Reiki, even if I'm not doing anything else, Reiki is a really good thing for me to keep up with. I was still taking the anti-inflammatory medicine, the herbal medicine from Zoe, and if you do want to check her out, her contact details are again in the show notes. But I was also I went for a Reiki session. This Reiki session was as normal, but it was even deeper, even more transformational than normal. It was the first Reiki treatment I'd had for quite a while. And because I'd been to this fabulous lady before, I always feel safe in her little sanctuary, but I was safe enough to release everything that I'd been carrying. I hadn't had any Reiki. I'd done self-Reiki, but I hadn't had any external Reiki treatments since I lost my little doggy last year. And the release of grief in this Reiki session was palatable. It was tangible. And I'm not going to go into how I feel it, because everybody feels emotions differently, everybody feels Reiki differently, everybody feels healing differently. I've been doing Reiki for a long time and I'm quite attuned to the energy, and even I was really surprised at the level of clarity I got with this release. It was physical and it was emotional, and I've written both of these and underlined them. And it really was, I could feel old grief, all layers of grief leaving my physical body. I could feel myself getting physically lighter as I could feel these layers leaving my body. And the immediate after effects, and this happened, so these notes were taken on the 14th, that's the Wednesday, and I did this session on the Monday. So I'm writing these notes 2 days afterwards. And I've actually said, today I feel my tummy feels much, much lighter. My soul feels lighter. I'm standing taller. I don't have any bloating. I'm feeling like myself again. I can feel my energy coming back. Now, this is classic post-release reorganisation of energy. And I can, sitting here now, a couple of weeks later, I can feel what it felt like at the time when I was recording these notes on the 14th of January. And I did feel lighter. My stomach, so much better. The stomach massages, I could actually do acupressure points. It felt as if had such a shift in my tummy. It felt as if the bloating had pretty much disappeared. I could still feel, certainly the bigger cyst, I could still feel the endometrioma. I could still feel when I was pressing, when I was doing a light massage, well, not even massage, but just checking out, just doing I don't know what you call it, self-assessment maybe. I could still feel that it was there, but it wasn't the searing pain. It wasn't the encompassing pain. My bowels, my bladder all felt healthy again. Everything felt as if it was coming back into balance after this one treatment. Now, again, it was probably an accumulation of also getting the clinic space, back to being a clinic from an office. The fact that I'd done it, the fact that I'd started to see new clients coming through, as well as having lovely feedback from the clients who'd come from the old space, and having this immense release, this release of grief and all the other stuff I'd been carrying, it was huge. And that also had a knock-on effect to my immune system. And this is one of the most important learning as well that I took from this episode. And I can feel my throat closing because I really don't want to admit this out loud. But I hadn't listened to my body. And I know some of you will be shaking your head. I know some of you will be laughing, but I hadn't listened to my body. Over Christmas, I'd had all the stuff that I talked about in the episodes directly after Christmas. So all the betwixtmas stuff that I talked about, all the stuff from last week's episode, all of that had been going on. Plus, I had this huge thing just tottering around in the background of reopening the clinic. And normally, if I have a Reiki session, I normally get a few, if it has been a while or if I've had some level of imbalances going on, emotional or physical, then I do kind of get flu symptoms. But because I'd had all of that going on and I hadn't listened to my body, as smug as I might have sounded thinking I'd taken 2 weeks off at Christmas, hey, aren't I good, look at me, I'm listening to my body, I hadn't at all. I just shifted what I was focusing on, but actually the stress levels were probably worse than they had been at the beginning of December. So I hadn't been listening to my body. I hadn't been honouring what my body was trying to tell me. And then when I did, bang. So as you already know, because I didn't record any podcasts, I was poorly. I got this flu that everybody had. Now that's probably picked up in college because the amount of people who were sitting exams coughing and spluttering and doing all sorts of awful things. I'm not surprised I picked something up, but my immune system was shot at this point. So it hit me really, really badly. After you have a deep emotional release like I felt, the nervous system often does shift gear. It kind of thinks, well, hang on, we've done this. I'm determined not to let you get back to where you were. So we're going to have some enforced downtime here. The immune system can briefly dip or redirect. And if you happen to come across germs at that time of the dip, then they can really, really knock you for six. And when we've been holding anything any emotions for a long period of time, letting go of those emotions can almost, it's like when we go on holiday and we've had like a niggly cold or we've had a niggly cough, and then when we go on holiday we relax and it comes out. So we kind of open the door for something that was already hovering, something that was already lingering. And I have to say, again, this is kind of a little bit bad because I'm talking as of now, not as of the 14th of January. But from the 14th of January, from although I was feeling rotten because I was ill, since I had labyrinthitis last year, I've had quite a bad bit of dizziness, quite a bad bout of dizziness. After this Reiki session, and especially after the flu left, it seemed as if the dizziness had gone as well. So I'm feeling, I won't talk about what I'm feeling now because this is all about the 14th of January. But even at the 14th of January, I was feeling better than I had done for a long time until the flu hit. When we talk about things like new beginnings, so I wrote new beginnings in my notes, increased workload. As much as I wanted to believe that I'd taken time off over Christmas, I'd actually given myself even more to do. The seasonal bugs and the winter immune overload. When all of that comes together, then it's a perfect storm. And that's not to say that that's not dismissing what I was feeling. That's not to gaslight myself by saying, well, what on earth? Why did you ignore your own body? I wasn't in the space where I'm just making excuses. And this is actually, again, this isn't in the notes for this episode, but this is actually really, really insightful, because again, what I've just done there is exactly what a lot of my clients do. And I do try and create a space that doesn't have any blame or any judgment, but it's incredible how much blame and judgment we put on ourselves. This word should. I should have listened to my body before I did. Why didn't I listen to my body? What are the reasons for not listening to my body? And actually, it doesn't matter. We do what works for us at the time. Even if we don't understand the reasons, even if it makes no logical sense, there's always a reason why our bodies, or why we don't listen to our bodies. And it could be something just as simple as my body didn't feel I could get ill over Christmas, so it just got through, and then when it felt it was a safer time, it just let go. I don't know, but I didn't listen to my body, and I'm not going to dismiss that. I'm not going to say that I should have done. I'm not going to dismiss the importance of not feeling as if I could at the time, and that's something that I'll reflect on in a later episode. But yeah, so on the 14th of January, which is again why I didn't record this podcast, was because I'd completely lost my voice. So the first thing that happened after the Reiki session on the Tuesday, I felt like I'd been hit by a bus, to be honest. I felt absolutely knackered, absolutely exhausted. Had a massive sore throat, my tonsils were up, went to bed on Tuesday night feeling shattered, slept like a log, woke up on Wednesday, very little voice, very itchy, scratchy, tickly throat, and I'd started to lose my voice by lunchtime on Wednesday. I'd lost my voice completely. A lot of the household, a lot of my friends, like I say, a lot of the people at college got it as well. So it wasn't just an emotional release. It wasn't just, quite often I'd talk about recurring sore throats in terms of unspoken things that you're holding that you want to get out. So this wasn't part of that. This was literally, and there might have been, I suppose, some stuff of that, but this was more a physical reaction rather than an emotional reaction. There were emotional reactions to the release of all that grief, but this cold was very much an immune system, just a tired person responding on a physical level. So I had to cancel the clinic appointments, and I had to start again on gentle internal work, just using affirmations, just I've put here refusing guilt and refusing shame, and that kind of goes back to what I said a minute ago about how much pressure we put ourselves on. This word should. I was feeling incredibly guilty, and I was very shameful about the fact that I hadn't been listening to my body, and it's a kind of a faceplant moment. Faceplant moment, is that what I mean? But it was kind of oh my goodness, I talk all the time about this. I make jokes of it. I talk to clients about it. And actually, it just goes to show how difficult it is when you're in the moment, when you have something that you want to complete and your body's saying, hang on, you need to take some time out here. And you're like, I'll just get through this, even if subconsciously you don't know that. Because like I say, I hadn't even mentioned the clinic opening in the last two notes in the episode of the last, in the last two episodes or in the notes of the last two appointments. Didn't even factor as a thing, but it was actually huge. So I wasn't ready to listen at that point, and it was only on the 14th of January where everything just hit me as in terms of how important everything was. So that's that. Like I say, some symptoms had started to improve. So my stomach was massively better. I've actually put here, despite my cold, my tummy feels fabulous. So actually my cold had started as well. So I'd lost my voice and I'd started with cold symptoms. My tummy feels fabulous. Pain, so these are the actual physical notes that I've made. My tummy feels fabulous. Pain is localised only to the area of exactly where the cysts are. I have no widespread cramping, bloating gone, nausea gone. And also to note here as well, the return of familiar manageable period sensations, so menstrual cycle sensations, a gentle fluttering, and the early period signals are here. So at that point I knew that my period was on its way. It hadn't started, but I was getting the familiar sensations, so not the heightened sensations that I'd had in previous months. I was just getting the sensations that I'm used to getting normally. You know, I don't like that word, but normally, what was normal for me. So that was all feeling a lot better. And then I've put here with little stars, because I wanted to read this out on the podcast, sometimes you don't realise how bad it was until it isn't there anymore. And that is so true. And I'm going to talk a lot about that in the next episode, as this episode embeds and becomes even more important. So what we know from this episode, on the 14th of January, I'd had a really stressful Christmas. I'd had a really stressful end of December, beginning of January. I'd put a lot on my plate. I'd managed, I'd got through, but that was at the detriment of my health. And when I had that Reiki session, Reiki did what it always does for me. It recenters, rebalances, and I got hit by, it wasn't flu, but I got hit by a really bad cold. We also know that as of the 14th of January, my period is on its way. I've got a cold. At this point, I don't know how bad it's going to be. There's no predictions, there's no forcing. We're just observing at the minute with curiosity what's going to happen. So on the Wednesday, I'd cancelled the clinic for the rest of the week, but at that point I had envisaged that I'd be back the following Monday. So I hope that you found that interesting. Let me know how many times you tut at me. Oh my goodness, again. So I'm judging. Am I judging myself there, or am I assuming I'm going to be judged by others? Again, interesting. I'll sit with that for a while. So the next episode will be winging its way to you next Sunday. And then after that, oh no, I won't share that. I'll share that in real time as we go through it. So just remember, if this episode speaks to you, that expansion is not symptom-free. So things might be getting better, things might be getting lighter, things might be feeling bigger and better and bolder. That doesn't mean that your symptoms automatically go. It doesn't mean that all symptoms go. So you might get different symptoms, you might get different ailments. Healing doesn't mean that nothing else is happening. Emotional release can precede physical vulnerability. I must have been feeling very cerebral that day. The body can improve in one system while the other rests. So my cold was coming out. I had all of the throat stuff. At this point, I think I was still having a little bit of tinnitus, but my stomach felt amazing. So it doesn't necessarily mean, it's not always a backward steps. Things can be happening in the background that are improving one thing when you're focusing on another. And saying no, listening to your body saying no, putting those boundaries in, is not failure, it's intelligence. But equally, not managing to listen to your body, not having capacity to listen to your body at a certain time isn't failure either. That's doing what your body needs to do to feel safe or to get through a certain situation. And that's okay too. So, hope this resonates. Check out the show notes for links to Zoe, who is my medical herbalist. I'll also put Ku's details in, who I go to for my Reiki. She's local to Leyland, so if you are local to Leyland, do check her out. Or you can come and see me in the clinic. If you're not local to Leyland and you can't get to my clinic, then I do offer online consultations, telephone consultations, and something called I've forgotten what it's called. I should have said something easier to say. Hormone harmony balance or something like that. Check-in. And it's essentially where you fill out a form, tell me what you've got going on, and I get back to you with a voice note and offer you loads of advice and any resources that I can at the time. So check out my website. The link for that is on the show notes as well. Until next time, I wish you every health and every happiness. Thank you very much for listening to this episode. I hope that it's helped and at the very least have given you hope and some solace that you're not alone in your own endometriosis journey. I'd like to thank Chris Collins for my theme tune. It's called Kindness, which I thought represented exactly what I wanted to walk this journey with. If you would like my help, if you would like any more information on my services, then you can check out my website on healthyandwomenhealth.com/women. And if you would like to take advantage of my free symptom tracker and a discount on the endometriosis workbook, then you can find that in the show notes. Thank you for listening.